Today is October 6, 2023. It's Friday, the sixth day of the weekly cycle. It's a preparation day before sunset as we herald a day that we worship the only true and living God, our Father, through his Son, Jesus Christ. It is indeed a glorious preparation day. Our message is entitled, The Last Display of the Power of God. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for being so good and faithful to us. May we understand your word today. I pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Let us open our Bibles in the book of Exodus, chapter 15, verses 4 to 6. The King James Version Bible has this to say. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea. The depths had covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand, O Lord, is become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Lord, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. Ellen G. White, Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, 1870, has this to say. It was very hard for the Egyptian king and a proud and idolatrous people to yield to the requirements of the God of heaven. Very slow was the king of Egypt to yield. While under most grievous affliction, he would yield a little. But when the affliction was removed, he would take back all he had granted. Thus plague after plague was brought upon Egypt, and he yielded no more than he was compelled to by the dreadful visitations of God's wrath. The king even persisted in his rebellion after Egypt had been ruined. Moses and Aaron related to Pharaoh the nature and effect of each plague, which should follow his refusal to let Israel go. Every time he saw these plagues come exactly as he was told they would come, yet he would not yield. First, he would only grant them permission to sacrifice to God in the land of Egypt. Then after Egypt had suffered by God's wrath, he granted that the man alone should go. After Egypt had been nearly destroyed by the plague of the locust, then he granted that their children and their wives might go also. But he would not let their cattle go. Moses then told the king that the angel of God would slay their firstborn. Every plague had come a little closer and more severe, and this was to be more dreadful than any before it. But the proud king was exceedingly angry and humbled not himself. And when the Egyptians saw the great preparations being made among the Israelites for that dreadful night, they ridiculed the token of blood upon their doorpost. But when the Egyptians, from the king upon his throne down to the lowliest servant, were afflicted and their firstborn were slain, then there was wailing throughout all Egypt. Then Pharaoh remembered his proud boast, who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go. I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go. He humbled himself and went with his counselors and his rulers to Goshen in haste, and bowed before Moses and Aaron, and bade them go and serve their God. Their flocks and herds should go also, as they had requested. They implored them to be gone, fearing if they continued longer, they would be all as dead men. Pharaoh also entreated Moses to bless him, thinking at that time that a blessing from the servant of God would protect him from the further effects of the dreadful plague. The Israelites left Egypt in haste, yet in order. They were divided into several bodies, and each division had its leader. The obstinacy of Pharaoh was such that after they had buried their dead and had seen that the dreadful judgments of God had ceased, he repented of having given Moses permission to depart. The Egyptians regretted that they had been so foolish as to think that the death of their firstborn was the result of the power of God. They asked in bitterness of one another, "Why have we done this and let Israel go from serving us?" Pharaoh prepared a well-equipped army composed of the priests of their idol gods and of the rulers and of all the great men of his kingdom. They thought if their priests accompanied them, they would become they would be more sure of success. The most mighty men of Egypt were selected that they might intimidate the Israelites with a grand display of their power and greatness. They thought that when the news should reach other nations that they were compelled to yield to the power of the God of Israel, whom they had despised, they would be looked upon with derision. But if they should go with great pomp and bring Israel back with force, they would redeem their glory and would also have the services of the children of Israel again. They overtook the Hebrews at the Red Sea. This place was appointed for the last display of the power of God before the infatuated Egyptians. In the morning, they came up to the Red Sea and saw the Hebrew host walking upon a dry path prepared for them in the sea, while high walls of water stood upon either side, congealed by the power of God. This exhibition of God's power only increased their feelings of rebellion, and they had so long resisted such manifestations that they were hardened, and in their blindness rushed into the path that God had miraculously prepared for his people. Then were fulfilled the words of the Lord, which the Lord spake to Moses, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. The judgment of God was manifested in the utter destruction of the Egyptian host. Ellen G. White, Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, 1870, pages 218 to 220. Have a wonderful preparation day. I truly appreciate your support and prayers for this ministry. Thank you so much. May God our Father be glorified and his Son, Jesus Christ, the only begotten divine, be honored. I pray. Amen.